Welcome to Blaze News, the mandate day 36. I'm Jill Savage. Tonight on the agenda, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer announced the Senate Democrats will oppose the House GOP's continuing resolution, calling it a partisan path. Schumer instead called for a one-month spending bill that will keep the government open until April 11th. This move risks a government shutdown, though. So here's what Schumer had to say about shutdowns last September.
If the government shuts down, it will be average Americans who suffer most. A government shutdown means seniors who rely on Social Security could be thrown into chaos as the Social Security Administration limits certain services like benefit verifications or fixing errors in payments. Our veterans could see regional VA offices shut down and support services put on hold. Some of our military service members could be forced to work without pay. Families who benefit from WIC and other nutrition programs could see benefits halted.
Senator Ron Johnson explained why Democrats should be supporting the CR on Fox News. Watch.
This is the only way to avoid a shutdown. Shutdowns are very costly, so I will support this, and Democrats ought to support this as well. If they don't, this is completely on their backs. They will be blamed. They should be blamed for a shutdown. They're the ones shutting down the government, not Republicans.
The White House pulls its nomination of Dave Weldon for director of CDC. A source told Fox News that Weldon did not have the Senate votes necessary to be confirmed. And following his withdrawal, Weldon released a statement saying that his previous skepticism of childhood vaccines may have cost him the necessary support. On X, RFK Jr. highlighted the MAHA Moms that made their way to the White House to tackle toxic ingredients in American foods. Watch.
It doesn't sound good. Polysorbate 80, that stuff's really bad. Sodium cereal.
Sodium steroid laxolate. I think you're getting the picture that you can't pronounce this stuff.
Sodium gilionate. Titanium dioxides, polysorbate 80, BHT, TBHQ. The Make America Healthy Again movement is the strongest movement in America because it contains moms.
Well, big cuts are hitting the Department of Education. This week, over 1,300 employees were notified of layoffs, sparking backlash from Democrat attorneys generals in 20 states. In response, they filed a lawsuit against the Education Department, arguing that the plan oversteps Congress's authority and undermines federal education policy. According to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, President Trump hopes to eliminate taxes for people who make less than $150,000 a year. Lutnick said that tackling overseas tax fraud could allow such major tax cuts to be made without causing the national debt to skyrocket. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told CNBC the administration will create economic certainty through deregulation. Watch.
As I told the Business Roundtable yesterday, as I tell your viewers, what we're trying to do is create economic certainty. We're going to do it with the tax plan. We're going to do it with deregulation. And I also said to the Business Round, I think it was 135 CEOs yesterday, if you came out with a plan similar to what DOGE wants to do with the federal government, all your stocks would go up 15 or 20%. It would be considered a miraculous restructuring, cost savings, and put you on a sustainable course. So I think we're not getting credit for this yet. I think we will.
The tariff wars continue to escalate. President Trump threatened a 200% tariff on French wine and other EU alcohol products. And this threat came after the EU said that it would continue with a 50% tariff on American whiskey. President Trump's birthright citizenship case might be making its way to the Supreme Court. Trump requested an emergency intervention from the High Court as the lower court ruling are blocked to his executive order from taking effect. Trump is expected to invoke the 1798, Alien Enemies Act to speed up deportations as soon as Friday. The law allows the president to detain, relocate, and deport non-citizens considered to be enemies of the United States, and it's only been invoked 3 times in history and has been upheld as constitutional. Border czar Tom Homan tore into New York Governor Kathy Hochul for preventing the Trump administration from accessing DMV data of illegal aliens and criminal backgrounds. Take a look.
You know, you got Governor Hochul who stood on national TV after NYPD officers were assaulted, saying she thinks criminal aliens should be deported. She said the same thing after a young woman was burned alive on a subway by an illegal alien. So she says, yeah, criminal aliens should be deported. However, when Mayor Adams meets with me and wants to help us arrest criminal aliens, get us back on Rikers Island, she goes down there and tries to fire them. She's got the green light law where ICE officers and CBP officers can't get DMV data. When they pull a car over here, they don't even know who they are because they can't get data from DMV because she locked them out. And if she says they need a warrant to get that data, and if they get the warrant to get that data, what's New York do? They notify the bad guy that we're investigating him. So I'm up here calling her out for sanctuary policies.
But while the Trump administration is trying to kick back bad hombres out of the country, there's one place where Trump would be welcomed with open arms, and he's trying to get Greenland. Take a look.
What is your vision for the potential annexation of Greenland and getting the potential? Yeah, well, I think it'll happen, and I'm just thinking, I didn't give it much thought before, but I'm sitting with a man that could be very instrumental. You know, Mark, we need that for international security, not just security, international. We have a lot of our favorite players, cruising around the coast, and we have to be careful.
Finally, Michelle Obama launched a new podcast with her brother, Craig Robinson. Her team is reportedly unconditionally disappointed with its performance of 9,000 views in the first 10 hours. With that, let's go ahead and bring in Blaze News Editor-in-Chief, Matthew Peterson. So, MP, everybody, we're all eyes on the Senate at this point in time. Are we going to avoid a government shutdown, and why do we keep doing this so often?
Because the country is divided, and that's the way it is, and it reflects where the people are. The people are divided. This is one of those cases where democracy actually works, but it's not very effective because the country is divided on this issue. Now, look. The Senate right now is very interesting, and this is the result of the hard work of the Trump administration in getting the House to pass the CR. This is really fascinating to watch. If you haven't seen some of the clips of Republican senators from today, you should go check it out because they have the Democrats with the backs up against the wall. Said, you're going to shut down the government? Go right ahead. We know your playbook on this. You go right ahead. FAFO. And so let's see what happens. It's a very interesting situation. As Rebecca Zelko said the other day on this show, the Democrats have their backs up against the wall, and they're on the hot seat for the first time.
So everybody is divided amongst the CR right now in the country. Things I think that people are not divided about, the tariff wars. We talk about them pretty much every day. Donald Trump makes headlines every single day. Now you're going after the wine, sir. I don't know, but a lot of my friends, and it's not even the females, guys. See, I know you're going to say it out there. A lot of the men are like, hold on. I think, have we discussed this? Are we going a little too far with all this?
I think this is where Thomas Jefferson himself might be a little, who would liked expensive French wine, and had it imported, might be a little like, this is going to hurt. I think it is one of those moments, though, where you go, oh, this could actually, you're going to feel a pinch with several products and services potentially moving forward. And this is the test. I mean, the test is if we're willing to do this and sort of change the way we conceive of the economy and encourage growth here as opposed to other places, we'll find out. But I had the same reaction seeing that headline, like, oh, that's gonna leave a mark.
It's okay if it's like the gas and oil and whatever. Like, okay, we're all going to spend the money that we have to on that. But when it comes to the wine, to quote what's the guy's name in Pirates of the Caribbean? But why is the rum gone? Jack Sparrow is
yes.
his name.
Well, it is the season of Lent, so we should all be moderate going into Easter.
Well, the MAHA movement, we saw that all the moms took on Washington D.C. Are we about to get healthy?
I think we are. I've never seen something like this that is not really right or left coded. It's more right coded than left coded. I think this is very real. It's very organic. Boom, boom, ching. I think that these people are serious. I think that everyone is concerned with health in this country in a different way. It's not just like sort of a fad or how you look. It really has to do with the well-being of our daily lives. And to see, the White House video and people actually talking about what goes into our food. I mean, this should be obvious stuff. Like, we shouldn't have to talk about it, but this is real. And, if you look at the people talking about these things, and some of them are good and some of them probably are saying crazy things, they're doing numbers for a reason. People are interested. And so this is a good thing. We're going to be covering a lot of MAHA as we move forward and lean into it because it's real and we're supportive.
We're definitely going to be following the tax situation as well. It's interesting to see the headlines today. to eliminate taxes for people that make less than $150,000. But we have already discussed on this show, Dan Scavino was going out there tweeting, abolish the IRS. Now, again, if you're making in less than $150,000 to never pay taxes, sounds like a great thing, but it is a bit of a shift from other things that we have already seen from inside the White House.
Yeah. So look, the tax issue for the right is always difficult because we have very strong old school beliefs, right, about how taxes should work. And right now you're seeing something play out. Really, you could call it like the realm of theory and sort of principled politics. And then there's reality and pragmatic politics. And those two things are going to come into collision course. And so, yeah, on the one side, you have libertarian and a lot more people who say, like, let's abolish the IRS entirely. But this is what's interesting about the tariff issue. Where are we going to start finding the revenue streams that we need? Where are we going to cut down and what are we going to get rid of? These are all exciting, open questions. And so I would look at it not as something anything should be fearful about, but this is all healthy debate and it's going to be good moving forward. And it's going to take a while to kind of transition into something new and hopefully better.
We heard Scott Bessent saying deregulation could lead to more economic certainty. Of course, this is as Republican as it gets,
Yes.
Just trying to go out there and get the deregulation, get the economy moving, and that is obviously going to be one of Donald Trump's top priorities.
Yeah, I think this is something everyone can agree on. This is something that's going to be good for business everywhere. The oppressive regulatory state under which we live, which is really laws created by people who you didn't elect. I mean, that's what it is. The regulations are laws that are enforceable, created by an entire bureaucracy of people who have jobs for life. That whole system that's what the mandate's all about, is getting rid of that. And so, of course, there's always need for some kind of regulatory state. You need some regulation, you need some law. Otherwise, you don't have a free market. You have chaos and anarchy. But we are so far from that. And this is something that business will find actionable. I mean, if they really start doing this, businesses will respond and you will see innovation and growth.
Well, the story of the day, the government shutdown is looming. So why is the Senate dragging its feet on the continuing resolution? A DC insider will explain just ahead. Well, with Good Ranchers, let's take a look, because since 2017, over 140,000 family farms have been shut down. And why? Because a lot of that meat in the grocery store isn't coming from American farms anymore. It's imported from overseas. They only care about the mass production and low cost. They don't care about the priority right now for quality food. This spring, we need to change all that. It's time to spring into action and put American farms first, because nothing beats American quality. And that's why I choose GoodRanchers.com, because they stand for integrity, tradition, and 100% American raised meat. And all the products at GoodRanchers.com have trustworthy ingredients, because we know that their meat is born, raised, and harvested right here in the United States. So you know exactly where it's coming from. It doesn't have any of the antibiotics or the hormones or the seed oils. It's just one simple ingredient that you could read. All the MAHA moms will love it. It's just meat. Good Ranchers delivers straight to your door, offering that true farm-to-table transparency. So you're supporting American ranchers and getting that good meat that you can feel good about serving. It's clean, it's simple, and it's exactly the way that it should be. And you get to skip the grocery store. So right now, Good Ranchers is running their Spring into Action promotion. So when you subscribe to any of their boxes, you decide if you want the free chicken nuggets, free bacon, ground beef, or salmon in every order for a year. Just be sure to use the code Jill at checkout for $40 off your first order. It's the best deal that they've ever had. So spring into action and help American farmers with every purchase. Visit GoodRanchers.com now. And remember, code Jill for free meat for a year and $40 off. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. It's Chris Bedford time. Bedford recently sat down with Rachel Bovard to discuss the CR vote, which is now in the Senate, the lack of Democratic defense, and more. Take a look.
Joining me now is Rachel Bovard, Vice President of Programs at the Conservative Partnership Institute, and a longtime Senate observer, participant person who's just been in and around politics and government for her entire career. And you might have seen some of her speeches that have gone viral, of course, at different conferences, at National Conservatism and others, and a friend of the show. Rachel, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm taking a look at this this deal is coming out on a Friday. It looks like the CR is coming to a head on Friday. They're having a vote. And I'm wondering, why on a Friday? I mean, I guess it spooks the markets. Is this a tactic by Republicans? The House Representatives passed this, I think, on a Tuesday, and then they left town. They're gone. They could have started moving right away. But is this a hardball tactic that Republicans are playing?
Yeah, Congress loves to go right up to the deadline. It's you need the pressure to force any action, particularly in the Senate. But it is interesting that we're seeing the House jam the Senate in this regard, because usually it's the opposite, right? Usually it's the Senate that passes something, says, okay, and then leaves town and says, okay, House, deal with it. But we're seeing that in reverse this time. House Republicans have passed this bill and they've left town. They sent it over to the Senate. Now, under the Senate's rules, they can't move to it immediately. It has to be Rule 14 to the calendar, and then there's a certain amount of time that has to elapse before the Senate can move to it. But in that time, that's when all the negotiations happen. You're seeing a lot of posturing from Democrats who say, well, we're not going to provide the votes for this. Okay. You want to play brinksmanship up until the deadline. That's exactly what Republicans will make them do to own a shutdown if there is one. But my sense is that I think this is potentially going to get through. It might be at the deadline, but it will get through.
I can't think of a time that Democrats have led a government shutdown since Reagan versus Tip O'Neill. Do any come to mind for you? You've covered this pretty closely. You've lived through and worked through a bunch of Republican backbench-led shutdowns.
There was a small shutdown in the beginning of the first Trump administration that was actually Republican-led, but to some extent, but it was pinned as the Schumer shutdown. And I think it was the first time Republicans made a successful attempt to pin this on Democrats. It was over the border. And the difference there was a number of things had already been funded at that point for the year. So defense had been funded. A lot of the veterans issues, like the critical issues that people really focus on during a shutdown, those were already funded. So this just was a partial shutdown. So it's not completely analogous, but it is an interesting quandary for Democrats to be in, because on one hand, they hate everything Doge is doing, but on the other hand, a shutdown is also going to hurt the federal workers that they now have lifted up to sainthood. So it's a question of optics are really important for them as well. And do they want to be seen as being obstructionists? Can they fundraise sufficiently enough to make it worth it? I suspect at the end of the day, the answer is going to be no to those questions, and they're going to give the votes to Republicans. But we'll see. I've been wrong before, so we'll see.
What is the difference? What explains the difference in the philosophical way that the different parties seem to approach this? I mean, Republican leadership, at least as far as I've ever watched, has never been very eager to shut down anything. They've always thought of shutting down the federal government as a bad thing. This usually comes from the backbenches of the GOP, or the conservative right wing of the GOP, who says, no, we're not doing this. We're not funding Obamacare. We're against this. This was passed. This was passed in bad faith, and we want to fight against it, or something like that. And then Republican leadership is kind of dragged kicking and screaming. The Democrats appear to be leading this from their top ranks. I mean, Senator Chuck Schumer is one of the people out there saying, we'll shut it down. But it kind of strikes me as like your child saying, I will destroy my favorite teddy bear. And you know that they won't. I mean, maybe to their brother that teddy bear means nothing. That's a real threat. But to the actual kid whose bear it is. And Democrats don't seem very good at shutting down, and I'm not convinced that they even have it in them. The government is their precious.
Right. I don't think they do. I think the position they find themselves in now is they're facing an existential crisis, right? Elon Musk and Donald Trump are literally shutting down agencies, right? USAID is gone. And the Department of Education is, literally half of what it was. So I think there's a lot of pressure for them to step forward in this moment and take unprecedented action. But that being said, I don't think they have it in them. So I think what we're seeing now is we're going through the stages of grief. But we're going through, the foot stomping and the tantrum throwing, which is necessary, I think, for their base to see. They have to do this performative sackcloth and ashes routine to be able to go on cable news.
To please the God.
Right. Exactly. They have to do this ritual shaming of Donald Trump and everything, and then they're going to give the votes, because at the end of the day, I don't think they can withstand, not being the adults in the room, and I don't think that their party is prepared. Their party is so fractured, also on so many different things. If you're going to go into a shutdown, you really, I think, and speaking as someone who has worked through many of them on the Republican side, you have to have message unity and you have to have strategic unity and focus. And I think Republicans are just Democrats are so fractured in this moment that even if they were to shut the government down, I don't think they could sustain it for more than a day or two because their party is just so split and I think running on vibes at this point. And so I don't think if they were to stumble into a shutdown, I think it would be a very short one.
And that seems to be a whole thing with the Democrats. I mean, for years and years and years, we were treated to moral blackmail and mixed with this championing of really left-wing causes. Transgenderism wasn't just something that was fair and merciful. It was something that ought to be glorified and vaunted. Same thing with abortion. Same thing with illegal immigrants. The act of love on steroids sort of thing. Same thing with the criminal. Have mercy on the criminal, not just because the criminal may have had a bad background, but because we shouldn't be hard on them. We don't understand them, this or that, and they're actually resistance fighters or the voices of the unheard, the riots and everything. You don't hear anything like that anymore. It's all process. No, very few, other than basically Senator Chris Murphy, no one's out there defending foreign aid. No one's out there defending the incredible wasteful spending of the government. They're actually kind of wishing that they had cut some of that themselves. People aren't even defending illegal immigrants. Like, you don't see AOC crying at the border anymore. They seem to only be having arguments about the process and where Republicans have the power or the authority or the legal authority. And that's seems like a harder thing to motivate people on. Have you noticed this shift or am I way off?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of, to their credit, some self-awareness that these issues lost, right? That the country, being on the 20% side of an 80% issue is a bad place for them to be. I think there are some people that are recognizing this. And, I think that they are in this disarray, to use this sort of overused phrase, of trying to figure out how to move forward. And there's a lot of, grasping and trying to triangulate. You're already seeing some Democrats take that position of, Gavin Newsom, I think, is leading that charge, right? Actually, it's a bad idea for boys to be in girls' sports, right? Wow. Grasping for the 80% issue. And I just think that they haven't sort of coalesced as a party around how to do this going forward. They're still very much in the picking up the pieces phase. And that's why I think, again, going back to the idea of a shutdown, I think it would just fail spectacularly because you have to have message discipline and strategic unity to be able to sustain something like that. And that is not what we're seeing. They are, I think, very much looking for a victim to hold up, right? They need something to show as a martyr, and the best they can come up with at this point is the federal workforce, which is so deeply unpopular across the country that even these process arguments, I think, fail and fail to resonate. Because I think a lot of the country is looking at Washington, D.C. and saying, actually, this is what I voted for. And even if they didn't vote for this, it's such an unsympathetic group of people because these services have been failing the American people for so long that Democrat attempts to paint them all as victims and martyrs, at least at this juncture, are not working.
I feel like the story that's going on right now, even that you saw Secretary of State Marco Rubio responding to, the arrest and detainment of a green card holding terror activist who is shutting down campuses in New York, that would have been all over the news 8 years ago. Somebody with a pregnant wife, someone who was married to an American. This would be the top source of outrage. But that moral blackmail is not really seeming to land the same way that it had previously. People just speak. Republicans and rhinos are no longer cowering in the way they did. You have people like Rubio out there saying, well, if you want to come to this country and support terror and attack Jewish students and shut down classes, then you have to leave. And this is not a right that you have as a foreigner. Do you see this change seems to be in the GOP in general? The Senate, which you've been a long time frustrated observer of, is the slowest place to change in all of Washington, D.C. Some people seem to be playing cards right now, but do you actually think that what is the future right now of that resistance in the Senate that you started to see bubble up over nominees? It kind of faded into the background now. Now we're at this fight. These first 50 days in the Trump administration, how are those relations with Capitol Hill going?
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch because, I've said often the Senate is the laggiest of the lagging indicators in Washington. It's always like 10 years behind where the country is. And, but they're in a position now where even if they don't totally support, everything that Trump is doing, or historically, they haven't supported tariffs or, things that he's doing, 5 years ago, they would have spoken up maybe on behalf of this green card holder that, Rubio is trying to deport. the base is so much behind what Donald Trump is doing, and he has built such a movement that it's almost boxed Senate Republicans in. And this is politics, right? And that's they have now found themselves in the position of, being dragged along by this momentum behind Donald Trump. And you've seen it, very early on when there was some initial resistance to Pete Hegseth or some of the president's nominees. Those senators stepped out and got their heads taken off. And that was an object lesson in many cases for the rest of these members. It's not that they simply, line up and support these noms, but they know now if they have issues or there are concerns, that those concerns need to be telegraphed to the White House privately. Right. We don't live in this world anymore where the Senate tries to hold its own, Senate Republicans try to hold its own Republican administration hostage. No, Donald Trump is very much in charge of the Republican Party. And I think the senators are aware of that. So I do think that they are aware of the tremendous momentum that has followed Donald Trump. And in many cases, their own voters, are part of that. So I do think it has been, and the Senate has been cooperative in many cases, right? They've confirmed to Donald Trump's cabinet. They are now working on the sub-cabinet. They are prepared in most cases to give him the votes for the CR. And I think that's to the credit of Donald Trump. He is dragging everyone across the finish line in the wake of his tremendous popularity and the momentum he's created.
I know you have to go in a moment. So just one last question about where the Senate goes from here. You've seen Senator Lindsey Graham, who's in election year, so once again he's conservative, pushing for the idea of codifying DOGE in a way that I think no one really expected that they'd be able to do. We could get a simple majority for the Senate to claw back money by its own decision that it has previously appropriated. Do you think plans like this are going to actually happen in the U.S. Senate, or are politicians in the House and the Senate still too wary of DOGE and everything that's going on to really want to put their fingerprints on anything?
This is going to be the real test, I think, for where Republicans actually are, because it's easy to confirm nominations, right? That's an expected thing the Senate does. But to actually codify significant change, that's a bigger test. And you're already seeing some senators come out and start to concern troll about DOGE, right? You're seeing Susan Collins as head of the Appropriations Committee, Lisa Murkowski, another big appropriator. The appropriators are starting to come out and say, well, I don't like the process by which this is being done. Needless to say, by the way, they've all of them have run for election on downsizing the federal government and, holding the workforce more accountable. But now it's actually happening in a way that's meaningful and effective. And while the process, we don't like the process by which this is being done. So I do think, when the light and the heat fades on the nominations fights, this is the real test of where the Republican Senate is going to be. And I think codifying this is actually meaningful change, right? Because we see change at the executive level can be undone by the next guy. You want these changes in place, they have to go through Congress. And I think whether this is the real litmus test of where Republicans are. And I think it'll be an uphill fight, but I think the more it's exposed to the daylight and the more people see it, I think the pressure is going to be on them to do something.
Rachel Bovard with the Conservative Partnership Institute, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Our next guest will expose who's been cashing in on illegal immigration. Stay tuned. Well, illegal immigration isn't just a border crisis, it's a money-making scheme as well. Big businesses, contractors, and entire industries hire illegals under the table to undercut wages and boost profits, all while pushing American workers out of jobs. And companies can get cheap labor, Democrats can get more voters, and the taxpayers foot the bill. So here to break us down for us is Orlando Salazar. He's a CEO and founder of Voz Media. So Orlando, when it comes to this, how are we supposed to be dealing with an issue that is this large and this substantial with so many different moving pieces?
Well, that's a great question. I think one of the problems we have is that you have people on both sides of the aisle wanting the same thing. And when you have people on both sides of the aisle that want something to continue to happen, it makes solving the problem really hard, because you have Chamber of Commerce Republicans who like the cheap labor, and then you have Democrats on the other side who think they're going to get the votes. So nobody wants to solve the problem. And that's why we're in the situation we're in right now.
So do you think, in this era of the new era that we're in, I mean, all of a sudden this momentous change really in the national scene of American politics, is there a chance now to come to some solution? I mean, certainly there is some momentum with the Trump victory on that side of things. I noticed, I was on the plane back from D.C. and I was sitting next to this woman I've talked about before on the show. And she admitted at the end of the day, very liberal, that if the Democrats had had someone who was more sensible on immigration, they could have possibly won. And I wonder if that sentiment will grow. Do you think there's any hope here?
Well, look, nobody wants the bad guys in our country. Nobody wants people coming in without accountability as far as knowing who they are. So what's happened at the border over the last 4 years was horrible in every way, shape, and form. And nobody wanted that. And that definitely affected the outcome of the election in a positive way. And Hispanics in this country didn't want that either. Yeah. So what happens next? Is there going to be a true reform? Everybody is happy about getting rid of the criminals. That's great. Nobody wants those guys in our country. But what is a common sense reform that we can all come to terms with when it comes to balancing people not being here legally versus a workforce, and somehow merging those two situations to where it makes sense for the country?
Well, we look at trying to get the illegals out of the country, and ICE is trying to get this done, right? But then we have a story where the FCC is really concerned that George Soros-backed radio stations, particularly in San Francisco for this story, were exposing undercover ICE agents. So what do you make of this story and everything that goes along with it?
Well, Soros bought, how many, 16, 17 radio stations? 18, yeah. And one of the main ones he bought was Radio Mambi in Miami, which was traditionally the lighthouse, broadcaster for especially Cubans in South Florida. And he bought that and basically undermined it and basically destroyed it. So that is happening in many ways all across the country, where the liberal powers that be, including Soros, are dismantling what little Spanish language conservative news and information on the radio is available. So the fact that they're using that in San Francisco is not surprising. I think what we're doing at Voz Media and what we've created is we're hoping to offset things like that happening, and that's why we're in the marketplace. But yeah, we need more voices. We definitely need more voices combating what the Dems are doing, especially Soros.
So it seems like, it's common knowledge at this point that the left has been much better than the right when it comes to media and owning virtually all the media in this country and understanding its importance. So, I mean, you started your own media company, I assume in part in response to this, right? And you've seen a lot over the course of years as you've founded this company. So talk to us about that. Like, where are we at now? What's changed?
Well, what's changed is Hispanics have traditionally, and everybody knows, the old Reagan saying, Hispanics are Republicans, they just don't know it. And I think this election showed that, right? This election brought people to the voting booth because of these issues, these common sense issues that affect families. And Hispanics are very family-oriented people. Nobody wanted their kids playing, girls playing boys in sports, or, going to the same restroom, boys and girls, and nobody wanted that. And then the whole transgenders, surgery issues, kids not legally needing to tell their parents about what they were doing, kids being taken away from their parents because their parents weren't agreeing with what they were trying to do. This terrible case in California where they took a girl away from her mom who was trying to transition, and they kept a secret. The school kept it secret. The girl committed suicide. So Hispanics aren't in for that. Nobody's in for that. And so the election showed that Hispanics they're aware finally of what's going on, and we just need to keep that type of information going to them and keeping them aware of what's happening in our country. And previous to us being around, they had Univision and Telemundo, which was just the same as CNN in Spanish. So now there's an alternative.
So how do you project that moving forward? Because we did see the election, right? We saw the historic numbers that were coming out. So when you look at what Donald Trump has done, even in just this very small sample case of the first few weeks that we've seen, how do you see this going forward with the Hispanic vote in particular?
Well, that's a key question because what he's doing now is getting the bad guys out. So what happens next? Who is the target next, and how do they approach that? Because everybody's for the bad guys being deported from our country. But what are they going to do about that next wave, which was during the Biden administration, the people that came in over the last 4 years? How are those people handled? And then beyond that, people that have been here 10, 15, 20 years who've really kind of become a part of the matrix of our country already. What are they going to do with those folks? People that, by and large, really haven't done anything wrong other than enter the country illegally, but they've worked, they've supported companies, companies have given them jobs. Until that situation is alleviated or addressed, people know if they get into here, they can get a job. So that has not really been talked about much by the administration, the employment side. So at some point, they're going to talk about that. What happens to the employers, the magnets that are drawing the people here? Because people know if I get there, I'll find a job. So it's worth the effort. It's worth the danger. It's worth, coming in illegally because I know I'll get a job.
Yeah, we will see. We will see how it plays out. It's going to be an exciting year because there's already debate behind the scenes about what to do about these things. And again, a lot of momentum rolling. So I imagine we're going to see a fast-paced debate. When it comes to the media side of this, again, I mean, it's fascinating to me that not only the audience understands, but it seems like people in business understand that there is a problem when it comes to media not serving various audiences who aren't served well, as you mentioned, the station that Soros ruined in Miami. Is there more awareness now, out there? I mean, in other words, is there like a response to Soros that's greater now, maybe among right-leaning people and understanding media, or no?
Wow, I wish I had a really good answer for that. One that I could sort of share a testimony about, but I can tell you from my standpoint and my own experience in trying to create Voz, they don't quite get it. Because we've been out there in the marketplace trying to raise money for what we're doing. And there is no George Soros out there on the conservative side willing to equate mission with profitability and say, yeah, I get the mission, so here, we're going to help you. It's all about the bottom line on the conservative side, and so it's been rough. It's been rough to get people to support. It really has. This
is something that has plagued my life and many other people. We've talked about this for years and complained about it. I've seen it get somewhat better. I think companies like Blaze are doing interesting things now. But why do you think that is? Like, why do you think it is that the right just doesn't get it, doesn't have its Soros funding media?
I don't know. That is a great question, because we've approached people that we believed would get it. And they look at our numbers and they go, well, we don't see a path forward. And I understand at the beginning, because you have to build an audience first. Right. You can't monetize without eyeballs. But now we've got the eyeballs. We're reaching, we're at 20 million impressions a month. We're getting 3 million YouTube views a month. And we're getting 1.6 website visits a month. So we have the audience, and they're very loyal to us. So the cool thing about social media is that our audience can communicate with us, and they tell us how happy they are that they don't have to watch Univision and Telemundo anymore. On inaugural day, we did a live show from Washington. We had 100,000 live views that day. So there is an audience, and we're reaching them. But it takes time to monetize, right? I mean, it's a slow process. So hopefully somebody out there will hear this and say, hey, we'll jump on board with you.
No, and it's absolutely necessary, because you do see when you're only presented with one liberal option, that's terrible. Nobody wants that. So speaking of social media, where can people find you? Where can they follow you and see all the work that you guys do?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm not the social media guru for my company. Voz.us is our website.
That's perfect.
And we're on all the other platforms.
It's definitely necessary. Everybody has seen what happened with the results with this election, and hopefully it will become a bigger and bigger trend moving forward. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, guys. Nice to be here.
Well, yeah, don't go anywhere, because when we come back, should Congress have to come back early from their spring break? We'll have your answers after this.
In my opinion, if we're shut down, you can't be fired. And what does that mean? It does mean that people will not be paid, but it does mean that they will get their back pay. So hopefully we can stop some of the bleeding. We just saw that the Department of Education laid off 50% of their workforce. So I don't really understand why anybody would say, oh, we got to take the high road. Listen, he is decimating the federal government. And you're talking about whether or not we're going to keep the doors open. He literally is shutting down departments anyway.
He's literally doing it. That's Jasmine Crockett. She's becoming a show favorite here on The Mandate. Unfortunately, so we just have to check in with the other side every now and then. So, of course, the CR is now over in the Senate. The House is already gone. They left town already this week. So, with that in mind, on X this morning, I had to ask you, with them being all the way out, should we let if the government's going to shut down, do they have to ditch spring break? Should we make them come back or not? 70% of people said yes, make them work. The next biggest was 26% saying no, they don't work anyway. We were trying to have some fun in the middle. Nobody wanted to have any fun today. We're like, no, they're going to get sunburned. They're going to be on a beach. They're going to be doing this. And then Zoom calls, we thought, you know what? Like, if they don't work anyways, that's the way it goes.
Look, I would be in favor of a reality show with all these people on the beach, zooming into work, and I can just imagine everyone in the house, out there in bathing suits, having a big beach party. I think that'd be hilarious.
But let's frame this, because if the Senate decides that they're not going to go along with the CR, if they change anything, the House has to come back. And they already had Thursday and Friday off. They actually left town on Wednesday, though. Mike Johnson said, you guys have done such a great job on Tuesday with the vote. Go ahead and take Wednesday off. And a lot of them did. So now the House members might have their spring break ruined. And that's where we are right now.
And this is the world's smallest violin.
It is.
Trying for all of them. I think most people are going to say, yeah, get back to work. It's fine. It would be pretty funny if they all had to come back. But again, this whole thing is you can just enjoy it because the Democrats are in a very interesting position. And what you saw with Crockett at the top, you said, we're fans or we're becoming fans. No.
We're not fans, but in a weird, hating it, love to hate it.
The hate watch, but also every time I watch it, I lose brain cells. I feel the brain cells popping in my frontal cortex. And you just listen to her. Oh, no, it's going to be a good thing because we're going to stop Trump from canceling your job fully. Please do more of this.
You have way more brain cells, though, when you're watching Jasmine Crockett than you did the other day when we played the Kamala Harris clip.
That was so bad. The Doritos, and did you people see this? It was awful.
Yes. So, you know what? With all of that, we still have to come together. We still have to find a way as a country to coalesce and bring everything together, Matthew Peterson.
Yeah, and I think today I just want to talk a little bit about this new coalition because you really do have a 60% of the country coalition that's coalesced and is real, but it's new. And so what's going to happen over the next few years is you're going to see tensions arise, healthy tensions between different parts of this new coalition on the right. So let's talk about the parts of that. Just think about the voters. Some people are sort of Joe Rogan listeners, not very political per se, but they are against the wokeness. They don't like what's going on there. You have the tech bros who are about excellence and merit and are very angry about Elon not being able to go to Mars if we keep DEI. They see real fundamental problems in leadership in this country. They don't want to be ruled, frankly, by people who are inferior to them, who are incompetent. You see the classic on the right, the religious conservatives, and the rise of young trads who are, very, very pro-Trump. You see also the MAHA Moms, right, rising up. The video we showed earlier from the White House, people talking about all these chemicals that sound like poisons in their food. This is a broad and varied coalition. And this is also what winning looks like. When you have a large coalition, you're going to have debate within it. And so a lot of what Blaze will do in the coming years is highlight that debate within the right, because that debate will decide the future of the country and where the policy within the party and the administration should go. So I just want to manage expectations, tell people those debates are going to come, and those debates are good. Those debates are healthy because they are about different sides that all have a point, balancing things out. So, for instance, even now in the HHS, in when it comes to health and the administration, you have some people who are filling appointments who are more on the tech bro side, like more Palantir types, and you also have people who are full MAHA. very much about moving against, a big corporate and a lot of the poisons and questioning a lot of the scientific research in the past, which was funded by big corporations. Now, those two sides won't always agree. I like them both, right? They both have great qualities, and if they're debating things internally, that's good, that's healthy, that's what we want. And so it's not going to be just one big happy party moving forward. And the left will, of course, say, oh, look how divided everyone is. But that's not actually going to be true. These people all agree on certain things and are moving in the same direction. They've left the left and the Democrats behind in the dust. And now, in order to build a new coalition of the future, we're going to have a lot of exciting debates amongst ourselves about where this should go. And again, that is a sign of winning because you have so many different people at the table.
Well, promises made, promises kept. It's easy, I think, to get people to come over to vote for you for a single day. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to build a coalition that lasts. But what I've seen, though, RFK Jr., I think, is a perfect example of this. Not only is it the entire MAHA wing of this party, but also the fact that he is who he is, the last name is what it is, and he goes through and he says, Donald Trump made a lot of promises to me. Mm-hmm. And he has kept every single one of them. Mm. That is the way to build something that is sustaining, that is lasting, that is not just like, hey, we're just going to use you to get votes so we can get the power and keep the power. No, we actually care about making something that is going to be beyond just a 2-year, 4-year arrangement.
Yes, for this to truly be a realigning, a generational election, right? You will need exactly what you're talking about. And what you're talking about is leadership. So the secret ingredient in a coalition and keeping it together is a sort of leadership that understands both what the best thing is moving forward, but also is able to, I don't even want to use the word compromise, but able to put together the coalition, put aside differences and figure out, I'll give you this, you give me that, that's acceptable, we'll move forward. So that's the leadership we've seen for Trump 2.0, as you call it. Trump 2.0 is someone who is able to manage that much better than before because he's letting a lot of different voices in, and those voices are mature and able to also say, I'll give you this, you give me that. So it's the leadership required is there from the top down to all the generals. I mean, that's what's exciting about this. But that doesn't mean there won't be serious debate. Any good administration and any good movement is going to have serious debate moving forward about what ought to happen, and not everyone's going to win everything they want, right? But my point is, this is what winning looks like. This and the secret ingredient will be leadership.
Absolutely. Now we have to have some leadership over there on the Senate side. Unfortunately, you can't just rely upon the Republicans because they have to get it out of cloture first. It's all just a bunch of Senate talk before they can actually even just vote on the bill. That's the way that they do it in D.C. They make it a little bit more difficult than it needs to be on purpose. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.